Yo, what is good, you darkaholics? Welcome back to the dark side of life, where I will be telling you some very dark stories. So, let's just get into it. The bond between a mother and her child is one of the strongest possible bonds. In fact, a study published by the Journal of Neuroscience states that the relationship between mothers and daughters is the strongest of all parent-child bonds. Mothers will always go the extra mile and more for their children. And that's why this next story shook me to my core. One thing that I admittedly struggle with sometimes while researching stories is finding information on one's upbringing and their early life. However, there isn't many stories where I can find absolutely nothing about them. But that's the case in today's story. I don't know. I honestly can't report on what kind of people they were or how their early life went. All I can say is a few comments that a longtime neighbor would mention about the family. The folks that we are talking about are 77-year-old Tao Nguyen and her son, 36-year-old Andrew Nguyen, who as of 2022 were living in Irvine, California. The longtime neighbor who had only observed the family over the years of living next to them. He said that the mother, Tao, was very much a reserved woman who would pretty much just stay to herself, although you would often see her gardening in her yard. He had seen the mother and son interact on a few different occasions, and he never saw anything strange. They never argued or fought. It just seemed to be normal. He would also speak about Andrew and how he had always been a troubled man. So somehow, one way or another, this neighbor was aware that Andrew had a history of mental health problems with a troubled past, and even he was surprised by what Andrew would do next. As reported by the Los Angeles Times in 2017, Andrew began attending the University of California, Irvine as a biological sciences major, before dropping out of the course entirely in June of 2019 without ever graduating. It's unclear as to why exactly he dropped out of the university, but it's safe to say he was going through some personal issues, as he was admitted to a mental facility around the same time. And then at some point during his stay there as a patient, he sexually battered his roommate and landed himself in court facing 2 felony charges. While he was in custody on these 2 charges, his mother would show up and post his bond of $100,000, getting him released. Later through the court proceedings, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of sexual battery and not guilty to 1 count of sexual copulation of an unconscious person. He was only sentenced to 156 days in jail and then released with 3 years of probation. That probation term ended this year on the 22nd of July, and he hadn't had any interactions with law enforcement since that day. Around 4 p.m. on December 13th, the campus police of the university in Irvine started receiving multiple calls about a horrific scene in the plaza in the School of Sciences. When they arrived, they found what the callers were seeing: a pair of bodies, both of whom were certainly deceased. Those 2 people being 77-year-old Tao Nguyen and her son, 36-year-old Andrew. After an investigation was done, they found out that Andrew had taken his mother to the school on that day, but the school was pretty much deserted because finals had just ended, although there were still a few people spread around the campus. After arriving, he gets his mom out of the car, and then they walk over to the science building. He takes his mom up the staircase until they're all the way at the top of the building. Once they were both up on top of the roof on the landing, Andrew grabs his mother and throws her off the side of the building, and she comes slamming down onto the concrete, dying on impact. Immediately after, Andrew himself jumps off the edge and comes landing on the concrete, dying as well. Sadly, this is the same staircase and platform where this has happened in a previous year. So on the walls, as you are walking up those stairs, there are multiple posters and reminders of suicide prevention. They still haven't uncovered a motive as for why Andrew took his mother and threw her to her death, following right behind her. It's horrifying. I can't say that I've ever gone into the woods, chopped a tree down, and then cut it up into even smaller pieces to use as firewood. Although many people still do it each and every year, it can still be incredibly dangerous. I think we've all seen videos of people chopping a tree down and things just somehow go wrong. I think it's safe to say that it's not an easy thing to do that just anyone can go accomplish. There's skill, experience, and knowledge required to do it successfully and safely. Now, I'm sure that there are tons of courses and schools that you could take to gain the proper knowledge and skill required. Probably an intensive training process to do this the proper way, or to learn to do this the proper way if you were going to do this as an occupation. There's also plenty families and people who possess this skill and have passed it down generation after generation. They live in the woods, and on a cold night or during the winter when they need firewood for their fireplace, they too go out and chop a tree down, creating firewood for themselves. This is still routine in the lives of many families throughout America, including the Bell family, who was from the beautiful North Idaho area. When they needed firewood, they didn't go out and buy it like many other people do. They would go out into the woods, chop a tree down, and put in the mass amount of effort that it takes to bring home firewood. After realizing that they were kind of low on firewood on October 15th, 2022, they were on another routine mission to collect more firewood when the unthinkable happened. 27-year-old Chris Bell, his little brother, 6-year-old Noah Bell, and their father were all up early that morning, ready to tackle the task of going out to get more firewood. They all hopped into his father's truck, which he would also use to tow different things around, such as the trees themselves, after they got them cut down, and then they headed out to the specific area where they would gather firewood. It was still pretty early in the morning when they unloaded all their equipment, located the tree that they were going to take, and got to work. They ended up choosing a fairly large tree that was positioned on a slant. For transparency, I want to be clear that there's no reported way of knowing exactly who was doing what to get this process done. We can only assume that 6-year-old Noah was not running the chainsaw. He was more or less probably just helping where he could and learning along with them. Everything was going according to plan up until roughly noon, after the morning had passed. By this time, they were moving through the process fairly quickly, with the tree already chopped down, and they were cutting it up into smaller pieces. Noah was doing what he could to help, Chris was tugging along, and their father was running the show. Until Chris looks over and realizes Noah is in grave danger. Like I said, the tree they were working on was on a slant, and as they were down the hill working on that part of the tree, a large log from up the hill had shifted and began rolling down the hill directly at his little brother Noah. This log suddenly began rolling at such a fast pace that Chris didn't have any time to think and just began sprinting at his little brother Noah. Just as Chris gets to Noah and is about to shove him out of the way, the log slams into both of them, almost instantly killing Noah, and is now crushing both of them underneath the immense weight of this huge log. The fact that the tree had stopped on top of Chris was now a huge problem, because his father was unable to just push the log off of him, so he had to quickly jump into action and chain the log up and then tow it off of the boys with his truck, and then very quickly jump out of his truck, probably on pure adrenaline at this point. He runs over to his son, Chris, who is almost unconscious at this point. He scoops him up, runs back to the truck, puts him in it, turns around and does the same thing with 6-year-old unconscious Noah. After getting the boys into the truck, he makes a 911 call and starts speeding to the hospital. I'm sure Dad had the pedal to the floor to get his boys to care as fast as possible. They finally made it to the Newport Community Hospital, and when they got there, they got Chris and Noah into the hands of the medical professionals. But upon arrival, both Noah and Chris were unconscious and unresponsive, so they just followed all procedures, hoping for a miracle. Sadly, 6-year-old Noah would be pronounced dead upon arrival. They tried everything that they could, but the boy was just unable to pull through. They tried the same thing with 27-year-old Chris, as he was still unresponsive. To their shock, he opens his eyes as they are working on him and regains consciousness, which is a miracle after being dead for pretty much 5 to 10 minutes. It's incredible that he was able to pull through and somehow come back to life. But remember, he's still in horrific condition with multiple severe injuries, including a destroyed pelvis. After regaining consciousness, he was life-flighted to the Sacred Heart Hospital that was located in Spokane. After that, he was put on a ventilator because he wasn't breathing on his own. It was incredibly brave and heroic the way Chris just jumped into action and didn't even think twice about trying to save his little brother. It's just heartbreaking that he was unable to, and Noah unfortunately passed away. And I just want to send my sincerest condolences to their entire family. I can't imagine what you guys are going through. Mind you, Chris was not alone in the hospital as he was clinging to life before finally becoming stable and then starting to show signs of improvement. Chris was happily married to his lovely wife Allison Bell, who was horrified to hear the news. The couple also had 4 beautiful children of their own who came this close to losing their father that day, who was also the sole provider for the entire family. A family friend named Carol Jones would start a GoFundMe in order to help Allison and her children with bills until Chris can recover and get back to work. Doctors were hoping for Chris to be normal maybe by the end of January, but that's not certain. But for now, they are just relying on family, friends, and the community, which they have raised just over $24,000, which is nearly half their goal of $50,000. As grateful as he must feel to be alive and have a chance to recover and still be a father, I can't imagine how he is feeling about the loss of his little brother Noah. Noah was an amazing kid with a great sense of humor, who dearly loved his family, and they had a tight family bond. Just 2 days before this incident occurred, Noah had celebrated his 6th birthday, surrounded by family, friends, and those that he loved. This picture was taken of Noah at his birthday party just 2 days before he was killed by the log. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for today's video. If you made it to the end, go down to the comment section and comment faithful so I know. And if you enjoyed today's episode and you want to join the team, you know what to do. If you want to, you can follow me on Instagram at Robert Clausen with 2 N's. If you have a story suggestion, DM me on there. I think that's all I have for you guys today. Again, I truly appreciate your support. Until the next video, peace.